Often we talk about the one percenters, those little things that can take a wrestler from good to great. And for me, tempo is one of the most important concepts to talk about. Today we're talking about the in-between moments in matches that can mean so much more than the moves themselves. Welcome back to World-Beater Wrestling. It's been a few months of inactivity. Thanks for noticing. But I'm back and I'm excited to bring about this topic of tempo, which for me is something that was a massive game changer when I finally had it explicitly broken down for me. How many times have you heard from an old timer that the moves don't matter? Well, they do matter and they should matter, but I'm in agreement that those little beats in between are the absolute most important of all. The moves are kind of like the thing that makes everything a little bit sweeter. They're the icing on the cake. They're the punctuation mark after a perfectly worded sentence. They only mean as much as they're allowed to mean. If the moments between the moves are bland, meaningless, and lack thought and emotion, then the moves aren't going to mean anywhere near as much as they could have. You might get the appreciative clap, but that's kind of where it ends. Whereas I think the whole purpose of wrestling is to build an emotional connection. You want to get people not just appreciating your movement, and that's that. You want to get them back for more. You want people to follow your story, follow your character, and watch your progress. They want to see your journey, so they have to come back for the next event. And I know that I'm making it sound super overdramatic when all I'm talking about are seconds of inactivity. But those seconds of inactivity are your moments to shine. Quite simply, if you're moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, how do you tell your story? Those few seconds that you have in between the beats are where you can show your emotion. You can react to the moves. You can react to the story that's being told. You can start to show those changes in tempo, speeding it up or even slowing it down. And let me tell you that a match that takes you on an emotional roller coaster with just fundamental moves will leave a much longer lasting impression than a spot fest with no heart. But that's not to say there isn't a time or place for a live stunt show. But if we leave the feeling out of it, we fail to capitalize on the most important thing in pro wrestling: emotional investment. Now let's do a deeper dive into tempo. If you go too fast, none of the story digests. If you go too slow for too long, people lose interest. Every match should have one or more tempo changes, because when everything is one level, one speed, one tempo, it all becomes white noise. Use a change in tempo at the right time depending on the story you're telling and the audience you have. It was best described to me that we are in a constant business transaction with the audience. We want the audience to make the moves first, and then we respond to those moves. This way we teach the crowd that their actions will spark a reaction in us. Sometimes when the crowd's hot and they stay hot throughout the match, maybe in your false finishes, they're really getting behind you and they're staying at that high level, you can hear that buzz. Maybe it's time to keep it going, keep the tempo up. You don't want to let the air out of the balloon. But sometimes that crowd might become lost. The audience reaction goes right down. And this is a moment where you might need to slow that tempo down to zero, just completely to nothing. This is where you might have a double down. You might lock on a hold, something where there isn't a whole lot of action, so that you can allow the audience to make an action so that you can now start moving and respond. When we become the ones to always ask for that reaction and always make the move first, we subconsciously teach our audience that all they have to do is respond to the action in the ring. They don't need to create the action in the ring. And the beauty of a live pro wrestling performance is when the audience feels part of it all, not just as bystanders, but as direct influencers on the action. So put as much effort into the non-action as you do with the action. And then in time, as you become more confident with yourself and your character, it should all start to become second nature. Eventually, you'll be able to sell your story more effectively, no matter who's watching.
If you want to see more videos like this, click on the subscribe button, spread the word, and if you have any questions or requests for World-Beater Wrestling, don't be afraid to comment below.